Okay, so here we are with my dear Michael Carnell. He's a monster in terms of consulting. He is an author, transformational speaker, veteran, and he owns Carnell Holdings. He has a breadth of experience that will be learning from him today. So if we can maybe have a little bit of your perspective into your story, can you give us more idea of who Mike is and how he started?
Sure. Yeah, I had a very unusual beginning. I mean, I was trained in electronics in the Marine Corps. And I mean, I had zero interest at that time in electronics. I wanted to be a bull rider, but there's not a lot of opportunity for that in the Marine Corps. So anyhow, I got trained, and all I wanted to do was get out and go back to riding bulls. And I got injured about 26 hours after I got out, so I had to find something else to do. And I was lucky enough to land at Motorola because of the electronics training that I didn't want in the first place. So it's one of those kind of serendipitous things that's like, okay, your life's going to go down this path, whether you like it or not. But I was fortunate. I ended up working with a lot of really, really good people at a really opportune time. Okay. In the 80s, we were really getting heavily impacted by the Japanese quality. And so we were looking at ways that we could keep up. And so basically, we had a guy there that most people know, Mike Harry. And Mike and I had a common bond. We both Marines. So that kind of gave me a better relationship with him than a lot of people. But he was brought in to help us understand statistics and help us with some problem solving stuff where we could use statistics. And it was just a great time. I mean, all the old timers at Motorola didn't want anything to do with it. But the doors were wide open for us younger guys that wanted to do it. And so we did. And concurrently, there was a guy we were in Arizona. There was a guy in Illinois who came up with the concept of Six Sigma, Bill Smith, okay, who is the father designated by Motorola as the father of Six Sigma. So if you see anybody else claiming to be the father, that's not, Motorola doesn't agree with that, because everybody wants to be the father or the godfather or the funny uncle or whatever. So no, but they haven't claimed anybody else other than Bill. So basically, it really took hold. Motorola started Six Sigma Research Institute, and this was never designed to be taken outside Motorola. Like a lot of people throw that accusation. We were one of the first winners. Actually, we were the first winner of the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award. And part of the agreement you get when you do that is that you'll go out and do speaking engagements and you talk about quality. So in those discussions, they brought up Six Sigma because that had been part of the evaluation of why we won. And so that's really how the idea of Six Sigma escaped from Motorola. And people got curious about it, and they started asking questions. Anyhow, in 1995, I'd left Motorola. I mean, I left Motorola to go make bowling balls, of all things. So I go from a high-tech industry to we make 4,000 bowling balls a day, which is hard to imagine a market that needs 4,000 of bowling balls. But yeah, we made 4,000 bowling balls a day. And it was great. I mean, I went over there with other Motorolans and we had a huge impact. But we moved around. In about 95, I was living in Colorado, and I started getting calls, from Mike Harry. It's like, do you want to be a consultant? And I'll be honest with you, I was so sick of big companies. I had no desire to get involved. But there was some family dynamics, and I ended up going to be a consultant because the money was pretty good. And so I ended up at Allied Signal, which was the first real major deployment outside of Motorola. And then of course, Larry Bossidy, who was the CEO of Allied Signal, which is now Honeywell, had been for years the right-hand man of Jack Welch. And the story goes that Welch and Bossidy were playing golf, and Welch asked him, what's this thing called Six Sigma? And he said, this is what it is. And so they ended up hiring us to do the GE deployment. And it was not a big, I don't know, every time I turn around, I run into somebody else that says they were the consultant for General Electric. There were 3 of us, and there were 13 sectors. Every single one of them was the same size as a huge American company. But there were 13 sectors, and Welch committed to a 5-year engagement. But if you look at his book, Straight from the Gut, he talks about how he implemented things there. And what he did was he implemented under his CIO, Gary Reiner. And so even though we were theoretically working for Jack Welch directly, we were really working for Gary Reiner, who was, I think he's, last I heard, he was at Boston Consulting Group, but he was great to work for. I mean, very supportive, very engaged. So he had a lot to do with the success factor, and I mean, you could be doing a review on a Monday morning, at some place like Evendale, north of Cincinnati, aircraft engines, and all of a sudden the CIO of General Electric would just come walking in and sit down for the day, which was huge. Okay. The other thing was he's only like 40 years old, and I may be off on that, but I'm not off by much. So if you're 40 and you're the CIO of General Electric, it's one of the biggest companies in the world, you're pretty sharp. So, I mean, it was good to have him help us in terms of how do we effectively, transform General Electric. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the other really good part was, and if you look at Straight from the Gut, Jack Welch had a long-term strategy, and this fit with his long-term strategy. But luckily, he had also had a change management initiative before we got there. And so realistically, we jumped on a fast-moving train. Okay. But yeah, I mean, Welch, I don't know. Everybody's got a very odd opinion of Welch. And what I saw was a guy that cared a lot about the people that worked at General Electric. He cared about performance. Okay. And I mean, there was no doubt the mantra there was, make your numbers. But I don't really I don't have a problem with that. I mean, that's basically what you're hired to do, right? So he was very strong on that. But people didn't mess around with him. I mean, you look at what happened at GE Capital, and all of a sudden he rolled in there, changed the management structure. Okay. Because they really weren't supporting Six Sigma. And at that time, they were 51% of General Electric's revenue. So, I mean, that's a huge risk, but it wakes everybody else up. But, we did, I don't know if you ever seen it, there was an interview with Mick Jagger once where they said, how long do you expect this rock and roll thing to last? And he's going out, maybe a couple of years. And that's kind of where we were with Six Sigma. It's like, okay, we'll get through we got through Allied Signal. That was a 2-year contract. We had GE. That was a 1-year contract. And then I got some more work with them for the second year. But, we got through Allied Signal. That was a 2-year contract. We had GE. That was a 1-year contract. And then I got some more work with them for the second year. But, we got through Allied Signal. That was a 2-year contract. And then I got some more work with them But then companies started just showing up, right? Because once people see what Jack Welch does, it's like the old, I want to be like Mike. It was like every CEO in the world wanted to be like Jack, only they just didn't want to say it, right? Because the popular thing was to not like Jack, right? And it still is, which really is irritating. So anyhow, all of a sudden Six Sigma took off. So that's why you saw it growing so fast in 99. It took off like crazy in 1999. I mean, we couldn't even support. Now you got to remember, okay, and there's probably going to be a huge amount of your audience that's not going to understand this. 1999, we didn't really have the internet, at least not anywhere close to where it is right now. And we didn't have cell phones, right? I mean, we had a cell phone, you needed a wagon to carry it around with you.
Yeah.
Now, that's an exaggeration, but it was huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and plus nobody ever called you on it, right? Because nobody knew how to use them.
Exactly.
But
and I wanted to jump in and maybe let you have your sip of coffee and help you. Let's reflect on the journey that we shared right now, or you shared. So imagine all the odds and all the things that happened. So first of all, you were having your thing with bulls, and then that led that led you. So that was a misfortune that led you to something good, and you pivoted into something that you loved. Obviously, it seems that you're passionate about the manufacturing optimization of things, and then the story that you shared as well, that now it clicks. The Japanese quality that came out in the 90s or whatever, with a period of time, you had to innovate and you had to be better, and that's the Six Sigma proposal that the US had to, okay, let's level up our standards. And that's the mentality, and that's where you guys took off and just like, hey, we need to be better because these guys are coming up with this crazy thing. And then the revolution that you mentioned took off. So that's a very insane. Funny you mentioned Honeywell. One of our clients closed Honeywell not a while, just recently, with some manufacturing products that they sell, and the very renowned company, and I think based on what you're saying about him, Jack Welch, I don't know. It feels like because of his aura or whatever, like a lot of people, like you say, have a bad connotation of the guy. He's like the greedy or whatever, but you knew him personally, and you and you mentioned, I think on the past interview that we had, you mentioned that you knew him personally, and he really cared about his employees, and obviously KPIs are there, and he needs to perform, and he's accountable for what the employees are doing, but he was not a bad person. He was not whoever, like, people are taking him in a wrong way, I would say. So just so some comments and some things that I wanted to bring up to the table, and maybe know your thoughts as well.
Yeah, let me back up to something though that is I think is really important. And I skipped right over it, and I don't know why I did. Okay, if you look at Duran's book, Managerial Breakthrough, okay, now you got to watch, okay, because there's a couple books out there that the title's so close, you can get confused. But I got my version is signed by Duran, but in that book, Managerial Breakthrough, he distinguishes between quality control. Okay. And if you think about it, he defines quality control, or defines control as no change. Okay. Maintaining the status quo. And then he defines breakthrough as dramatic change. Okay. Or dynamic change, I think is the word he uses. Okay. So when you're under pressure, because the Japanese, like in the 80s, were were creating a huge amount of pressure. I mean, the gap between us and Japan in terms of quality was huge. And so you got a country that's plodding along going, oh, we want to do incremental change. And, it's a long, slow process and things like that. And what we're playing catch up. We didn't have time to do incremental change. And so Six Sigma, it's kind of devolved kind of towards the quality control side. But originally it was about breakthrough. Okay. It was like, how do I go from where I am now to where the Japanese are now? Okay. And so it was, I don't have time to go through all these incremental steps. I need to make this jump. And so you kind of, if you look in that book by Duran, you'll see a lot of the information that you saw in the early years, okay, around Six Sigma. And there's a diagram in there that shows a process and then the jump down to, a breakthrough point, and then it comes back under control. So people lost that idea that it was a breakthrough strategy. Now, in terms of knowing Jack, I was not, let me make sure we know. I wasn't like going to lunch with Jack. Okay. We weren't that close. Okay. But, you got, when you're doing the Six Sigma deployment with him, you meet him and you get to know him, but you watch him, you get to know him a little bit, but you watch what he does. Okay. And he had a review process he would go through with his different sectors. And a huge amount of time, it was a week-long review process, and a huge amount of that time was discussing employees, and he was extremely interested in who was doing well and who wasn't doing well. If they're not doing well, why aren't they doing well? Things like that. But he also paid attention to, recognition and rewards, which was a huge amount of recognition from Welch. But like I had a lady, oh God, it's South Carolina plant. We're making gas turbine generators. And God, what's the name of the town? But anyhow, she had a project. It was a broaching project. So it's like just machining, it's not any big fancy thing or something like that. But she made a huge amount of difference in the way the operation ran, and when you're on those parts are expensive. So if you do something wrong, you can cost the company a lot of money. But just out of that one project, she got a $5,000 bonus. So Welch was not afraid to step up and say, hey, you did a great job. Let me share some of this money with you. And then she just turned around and put on a huge party. Okay. Maybe not the full 5,000, but it was a couple thousand. But, and so she was, that was the other thing about GE. They had a lot of very, very smart people there. And so you give them $5,000 in recognition, they spend it, in a way that makes sense and that other people benefit from it. Anyhow, so yeah, he had the hiring practice of hiring extremely smart people. Mm-hmm. They were extremely motivated. They executed well. They had a thing called Edison engineers, which were just like the cream of the crop. That's probably not fair to say. It's not fair to the people that weren't Edison engineers, but they were some amazing people. So yeah, he had that whole dynamic going there. And I mean, it was just a very strong culture. And it was a culture that was never content to just sit still. Okay. Change was part of that culture. And so that's what I mean. We got on a fast moving train, and, it may look like we did this great transition there, but that transition was already in progress by the time we got there. So yeah, it did. It was a great place to work. But I mean, imagine in all the deployments that you do, how much could you get done if you didn't have any resistance to change,
Yeah.
And basically that's what you had in General Electric. You had a culture that just didn't resist change. Okay.
Yeah.
They knew how to support it. They knew how to implement it. They knew how to get things done. And that was a huge, huge factor in what went on there,
Yeah. So,
but I'm sorry, go ahead.
In that sense, I wanted to mention, like, every stage of the evolution of businesses, there's always something that makes us level up. I think in this case with the Six Sigma, it's a way for America to level up to the quality that the Japanese were having. So right now, what is happening? The AI revolution is happening. So now whoever it is leveraging AI in a proper way, they are leveling up their business in a way that Six Sigma did its job back in the day. And obviously it's an evergreen methodology, because I guarantee that it's being used right now of the day on manufacturing in a daily basis. It's something that will never stop. So once it started, level up companies, whoever is not doing it, they fail on surviving and thriving. So I wanted to also, so the thing that you mentioned, the breakthroughs, or dynamic change, which is how it's called in the book that you shared. It's exactly the things that we're looking for as business owners. We're looking to breakthroughs. We're looking to things that makes us have an edge over the competitors, over someone else. That's a great insight on your side. And I lastly, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, because I was in the Air Force in Mexico for about a year, and I got injured, and I had to exit myself from being a pilot. That was my dream, and then I went into graphic design and computer. So it's kind of the same story, relatable. Not bulls, but airplanes. A little bit different. And the discipline. I wanted to ask you about discipline. For me, it has tremendously helped me with growing my own business, because of the grit, because of the labor that you need to put in, because of the sacrifice and what have you. I wanted to ask you if it did the same for you, being Marine Corps veteran, in terms of the focus, in terms of the working ethic and whatnot.
Yeah, actually, and I think it's probably better, more value now. Marine Corps boot camp kind of has a reputation. It's a pretty high stress environment, especially, I was 17 when I went in. So, I was still a baby, but you get out, and then you get in business, and you get around people, and they're going, oh my God, I'm so stressed. I have so much anxiety. And you're just kind of looking at them and you're going, what are you stressed about? It's like, there's nobody shooting at you. There's nobody going to come down here and physically harm you if you don't get something done. And so you just kind of kick back and you're looking at them and you're kind of going, I'm not sure I understand, and so you're not getting stressed. The thing you have to watch a little bit, okay, is, if you get a little pushback, at least in the Marine Corps, it probably gets settled in a way that probably doesn't work out here when you're not in the military. But it's still, you're not afraid to walk up to somebody and go, you know what, you're the problem, and you and I got to figure it out. And so it tends to make you more honest, and if I got a problem with somebody, I tell them I got a problem, which probably doesn't sit well with a lot of these, corporate types. But it also sits well with others that are really, good corporate types, the guys that make a difference.
Yeah.
And so, the honesty part of it, the lack of anxiety. I mean, I just had a guy the other day talking to me about getting anxious, and I'm going, I don't know about you, but I said, there's nothing I've been probably the last 30 years that has caused me an anxiety, So you just it settles you down, right? It kind of says, okay, everything's going to look pretty mild compared to what you've already been through.
Yeah, being grateful helps, at least for me. And I think, I don't know about you, but I don't think you would have a problem waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. to work on your business and do stuff, because that's, that's what we did. But man, when you talk about that with someone else that is like just on corporate world, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm waking up at 4:30 a.m. and I'm doing this and doing that, and they just stare at you like, well, why are you like, it's just, man, it's crazy. But nevertheless, I wanted to thank you, Mike, for the time that you provided today. And I don't know if you have any final remarks to the audience. We wanted to make it just long enough, but at the same time not too lengthy, so because there is CEOs, it's business owners who are watching also. We want to make it short, valuable, transformational, relatable. So even though Six Sigma and the things that you mentioned, quality control, it applies. And prove me wrong, it applies to anything. It doesn't matter if you're a manufacturer. It applied to me. I'm not a manufacturer person, but I need quality control. I need to have processes. I need to have breakthroughs. I need to have edges that are better than the competitors, and I can still apply those principles into my digital business. That being said, I wanted to give you the final words so we can close the episode. And go for it, Mike.
Yeah, okay. I just had this discussion the other day. We were talking about a thing called measurement system analysis. Okay, and for some reason, a lot of people don't like it. Okay, and a lot of people don't get it. And unfortunately, it was my contribution to the Six Sigma system. Okay, and it was just a consequence of a situation I got into in Motorola. But if you go look at remember we had the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. You get into things where people go, well, Six Sigma doesn't apply to me. And we had exactly that same situation in GE Capital. Okay. Now, if you go back and you look at the subprime mortgage crisis, you can see it in the movie The Big Short. The guys at Capital said MSA doesn't apply to us. We don't build things. We don't need to measure anything. And it's like, yeah, you do. Okay. If they would have gone ahead and really paid attention during MSA, this is just to kind of say, okay, you got to take a look at your business in a different way. Okay. Yeah, it's not the normal application, but it does apply. If they would have understood the concept of MSA, measurement system analysis, and understanding your business, because you got good data, okay, because you give engineers good data, they'll make good decisions. That's what engineers do, okay. Managers, not quite so much, okay. But if you look at it, when they were doing all that stuff that got us into the crisis, it was based on bond ratings. Those bond ratings were measurement systems. And in that movie and in the book, you can see where that was measuring bonds with a rubber ruler. Okay. I mean, an inch wasn't an inch. Okay. And and this feeds into AI, right? Because AI now is what's looking at that data. So you've got to make sure you're feeding good data, which means you've got to have good measurement systems. And that's the thing that they need to pay attention to. The deeper you get into AI, okay, the more pressure that you're going to have to get good data, because AI doesn't know the difference, okay? It just takes whatever you give it and it says, this is what the data says, okay? And if you give it bad data, it's going to give you a bad response. Okay, so if they're going to do anything and they want to implement AI and they want to do it effectively, you better make sure it's got good, clean input, and that's going to be 100% from the measurement system. And just understand a measurement system isn't necessarily a pair of dial calipers. Okay, it can be all kinds of things.
Yeah, exactly. So that being said, I really love that the closing remark, which gives us the like I sometimes I sound like a drum repeating over time this that you said tremendously well. Garbage in, garbage out. So if you put in garbage into the AI doesn't know the difference, and AI is going to come up with whatever, and it's not going to serve you as it should. So absolutely correct. And Mike, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate the remarks, the knowledge, and I took some notes on the books that you shared. Thank you for that, and the authors. I will probably, if you allow, probably we can do another one in 12 months from now and see some things that you have done in the future, whatever, so that we can continue with the growth process together. If you're okay with that.
That sounds good.
Perfect.
Yeah, if I get up there in Canada and visit my family, maybe we can meet for a coffee or something.
I love it. So that's a thing. I think that could be stressful, having a cold coffee. But only that thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity. Y'all have a good day.